You go online just to look at something simple. 10 minutes later, you've bought something you didn't even need with money you shouldn't be spending. And the worst part? That instant rush of pleasure vanishes the exact second you click place order. If you think this is just a lack of willpower, you are wrong. Modern marketing was engineered specifically to hack your brain's dopamine system. In other words, you aren't failing because you are weak. You are being manipulated by your own biology. But today, we are turning the tables. In this video, I'm going to teach you the practical psychological tricks to trick your brain back and block impulse buying before it destroys your finances. And the first step to doing that is understanding that the truth giant corporations don't want you to find out is that your next impulse buy started long before you opened your banking app. It began in the most primitive architecture of your brain. Behavioral scientists and data neuroscientists now work hand in hand with software engineers in Silicon Valley to map your biological vulnerabilities. The ultimate goal of every single notification, button color, and deal alert is to temporarily deactivate your prefrontal cortex. This is the gray matter located right behind your forehead, responsible for logic, projecting future scenarios, calculating risks, and, most importantly, impulse control. When you are tired after a long day at work, stressed about deadlines, or just bored on the couch, the glycemic energy of your prefrontal cortex weakens. It's as if your rational defense barrier runs out of battery. The exact moment this logical barrier drops, algorithms activate the first great invisible psychological trigger of the human mind, known in academic circles as the Diderot effect. This concept was named after the famous French Enlightenment philosopher Denis Diderot. In one of his most brilliant essays titled "Regrets on Parting with My Old Dressing Gown," Diderot describes how he received a magnificent, high-luxury scarlet silk dressing gown as a gift. At first, he was delighted, but as he sat at his old wooden writing desk wearing this gorgeous piece, he began to feel deeply uncomfortable. The gown was far too elegant for that old desk. So, he bought a new, expensive mahogany desk. Then, he noticed his old chairs didn't match the new desk, so he replaced them with genuine leather armchairs. Next, he replaced his curtains, his paintings, and his rugs. By the end of the process, Diderot was heavily in debt, surrounded by luxuries he never needed before. He wrote, "I was the absolute master of my old gown, but I became the slave of the new one." Modern neuroscience explains that the Diderot effect occurs because the human brain hates incongruity. When you buy an item from a higher category, whether it's a top-tier pair of running shoes or a brand new iPhone, your brain doesn't process it as an isolated unit. It shifts your perception of identity and creates an artificial, cascading need to buy the right socks, the right phone case, the matching accessory, and the more expensive data plan to complement the look. It's a consumption domino effect that feeds on itself within your subconscious. To ensure you don't stop to think during this domino effect, modern e-commerce couples this identity shift with a biological mechanism of evolutionary pressure, the illusion of scarcity. When you browse a clothing or travel website and see a flashing red warning on the screen saying, "Only 2 left in stock at this price," or a countdown timer ticking away the seconds, your brain doesn't read that as a digital marketing technique. It reads it as a literal threat to survival. On the African savanna, thousands of years ago, resource scarcity meant death. If your ancestors saw there were only a few fruits left on a tree or very little water in a watering hole, they had to act immediately without pondering or planning. The limbic system, the deepest and most primitive part of our mind, instantly enters fight or flight mode. It floods your body with cortisol and adrenaline, generating real physical anxiety. This artificial urgency hijacks your rationality, making you believe that missing out on that TV or jacket deal is equivalent to losing a vital chance at survival. You act purely on the emotion of the moment, driven by an irrational fear of missing out on that TV or jacket deal is equivalent to losing a vital chance at survival. You act purely on the emotion of the moment, driven by an irrational fear of missing out. But for this simulated urgency to work and force you to click that checkout button, these platforms need to activate a very specific chemical fuel inside you. And it is by understanding the surgical mechanics of this chemistry that we can begin to design our first practical counterattack. To understand how to paralyze an impulse before it wrecks your finances, you need to completely demystify the dopamine cycle. There is a massive popular myth that dopamine is the neurotransmitter of pleasure and satisfaction, but neurobiology has already proven that this is a lie. Dopamine is actually the neurotransmitter of the search, the desire, and the anticipation of pleasure. It doesn't care about the object you bought, it only cares about the journey to get it. One of the most revealing experiments on this mechanism was conducted by neuroscientist Robert Sapolsky at Stanford University. He trained monkeys so that whenever a light turned on in a box, they had to press a lever 10 times, and after the 10th press, they received a food reward. Sapolsky measured dopamine levels in the animals' brains throughout the process. To the initial surprise of the researchers, dopamine did not spike when the monkey ate the food. The dopamine peak happened the exact second the light turned on, and the monkey started pressing the lever. It was the expectation of the prize that flooded the brain with energy, not the prize itself. When we translate this to modern human financial behavior, the shopping mall or the shopping app is our box. The light turns on when you see a personalized ad on your Instagram or TikTok feed. Your dopamine levels spike while you scroll the page, select product colors, read reviews from other buyers, and imagine the transformation that object will bring to your social or professional life. The chemical apex happens right when you are typing in your payment details, but the exact millisecond the transaction is approved and the order confirmed message pops up on the screen, dopamine crashes down a cliff. The spell breaks. The pleasure vanishes almost instantly because the brain has already achieved the goal of the hunt. This is why just a few days later, when the Amazon cardboard box finally arrives at your doorstep, you barely feel any enthusiasm opening it. Often, the product sits in your closet with the tags attached for weeks because your brain never actually wanted the product. It only wanted the chemical spike of anticipation. Knowing that this biological flood is temporary and artificial, the first practical and highly effective action to regain control of your money is to apply the dynamic 72-hour rule. When the impulse triggers and chemical urgency blurs your vision, you are not going to try to wage a war of pure willpower by simply telling yourself no. Behavioral psychology shows that direct prohibition against a dopamine-saturated brain creates severe internal frustration, which ironically inflates the perceived value of the object and strengthens the desire to buy in the following hours. Instead of resisting the river, you will divert its course using the phantom cart strategy. The method consists of giving yourself full permission to desire. You will go to the website, choose the exact model of the item, select the size, fill in the shipping options, and advance to the very last screen where the payment button flashes. At that moment, instead of completing the transaction, you will close the browser tab, lock your phone, and set an alarm on your calendar for exactly 72 hours from that minute. Clinical studies on procrastination and desire behavior show that the half-life cycle of dopamine in the human reward system associated with visual consumer stimuli hits its sharpest decline within the first 24 hours and returns to the baseline of chemical neutrality within 72 hours. During these 3 days of waiting, the emotional hijack promoted by the limbic system completely dissipates. The prefrontal cortex receives normalized blood flow and reassumes leadership over your thoughts. When your phone alarm goes off after 72 hours and you open the cart again, the scenery changes. In over 80% of documented cases, the person looks at the price, looks at the object, and feels a wave of indifference, closing the page without spending a single dime because they realize it was nothing more than an artificial echo of a marketing stimulus. However, the phantom cart strategy can only be executed if your brain has that breathing room before finalizing the process. And it is exactly in this temporal loophole that we hit the biggest and most dangerous trap in the modern digital financial ecosystem: the systematic elimination of the physical pain of paying. In behavioral economics, there is a fundamental concept developed by psychologist Dan Ariely called the pain of paying. Through neuroimaging tests, it was discovered that the human brain processes the act of losing financial assets in the exact same neural networks that process the physical pain of a body injury, specifically in the insular cortex. When you open your physical wallet, pull out a crisp $100 bill, look at the face printed on the note, hand that textured paper into the hand of a stranger, and see your wallet physically become emptier, your brain experiences a real spike of neurological discomfort. This physical pain acts as a natural biological brake that makes you question the value of every transaction. Physical cash imposes tactile boundaries on our minds. Realizing that physical pain reduced sales volume, financial engineering in recent years focused all its efforts on numbing the consumer's insular cortex by completely eliminating friction. Apple Pay, one-click checkout, saved credit cards on Amazon, facial recognition that approves payments in seconds, and contactless cards turned real money into something completely abstract and invisible to the subconscious mind. Your brain has no biological evolution to associate a quick flash of a green light on a terminal or a fast tap on a glass screen with the fact that you just traded dozens of hours of your labor, your vital energy, and your professional effort to pay off that credit card statement at the end of the month. To the nervous system, clicking a digital button feels like a free act with no immediate biological consequences. To break this digital anesthesia, your action must be the deliberate reintroduction of artificial friction into your financial routine. You need to make the act of spending intentionally difficult and uncomfortable for your brain. Starting today, your golden rule will be to delete all credit card data and billing info saved on every single platform you use: e-commerce sites, food delivery apps, app stores, and internet browsers. Turn off autofill. If you want to buy anything online, no matter how small the amount, you will be forced to make a real physical effort. Get up from the couch, walk over to where your physical wallet is, grab the card, and manually type in every single one of the 16 digits, the expiration date, the 3-digit security code, and then open your banking app on your phone to wait for two-factor authentication. Each of these intermediate steps adds precious seconds of mechanical effort. This physical friction interrupts the automatic flow of the impulsive habit. The time spent typing the numbers acts as a barrier that slows down the emotion and gives your rational brain the necessary seconds to wake up and ask the crucial question: do I really want this, or am I just operating on autopilot? The more clicks and physical steps your brain is forced to execute, the lower the mathematical probability of the consumer impulse consolidating. Adding this mechanical barrier will save you from dozens of mindless purchases throughout the month. But to solve the problem at its deep root, we need to shed light on what happens to your emotional ecosystem, the exact instant the urgency to spend takes shape. If you do a sincere audit of your financial history over the last few months, you will notice a very clear and repetitive behavioral pattern. Your most expensive, useless, and impulsive purchases almost never happen during moments when you are feeling radiant, focused, secure, and productively. They invariably happen at the end of a tedious Sunday evening, when the vague anxiety of Monday morning starts tightening your chest, or at the end of an exhausting Friday, after an argument with your manager or a day of stressful targets, under the blanket of the classic mental justification that you deserve a reward or a comfort for enduring so much pressure. The fatal mistake most people make is trying to treat impulse buying as a purely financial issue, one of basic math or a lack of budgeting apps. In reality, impulse buying is a symptom of a dysregulated emotional coping mechanism. When your brain experiences prolonged stress, loneliness, frustration, or boredom, your internal levels of well-being neurotransmitters, like serotonin, suffer a sharp drop. Your nervous system enters a state of chemical discomfort and desperately searches for an express lane of relief to restore mood balance. In the modern world, the consumer market offers the fastest, easiest, and most socially accepted route to this relief through buying. Acquiring something new provides a temporary, false sense of control, novelty, and power over your own life. However, trying to erase emotional stress by spending money is the equivalent of drinking salt water to quench your thirst. The relief lasts seconds, and the financial dehydration that follows only increases the original anxiety. Neuroplasticity, the science that studies how the brain shapes itself, teaches us that you can never extinguish an old habit circuit by simply trying to create a behavior vacuum. The mind does not tolerate emptiness. To reprogram the automation, we need to apply the technique of the correct dopaminergic substitution. The first step is the conscious mapping of the trigger. Whenever you catch yourself with your finger hovered over a shopping app, you are going to freeze the action for 5 seconds and do a clinical self-investigation, asking out loud, am I about to buy this because I actually need the object, or because I am trying to fill a void of boredom, fatigue, or stress? If the diagnosis points out that the fuel is purely emotional, you must keep the app closed and voluntarily offer your brain an alternative source of dopamine that is constructive, healthy, and completely free. You need to have this list of substitutes previously defined. It could be a 15-minute session of a strategic video game that requires absolute focus from your brain, a brisk walk outside listening to a podcast or your favorite music, or even the counterintuitive habit of opening a high-yield savings or investment account page and visually tracking the growth of your long-term savings. The central goal here is to hack the reward system, delivering to your mind the exact sense of novelty, progress, and movement it was looking for in the purchase, but without transferring a single dollar of your wealth into someone else's account. Breaking away from this old neural wiring and building these new pathways of financial lucidity is not an isolated event that happens overnight. But the good news from behavioral psychology is that human habits are entirely moldable if we apply the consistency of structured repetition. The 21-day cognitive shield, Novo Final. To permanently cement all the scientific tools we've discussed so far and transform them into an automatic shield against predatory consumerism, the ultimate secret is to envelope these actions inside a practical 21-day challenge. This is the average period estimated by neurobiology for synaptic circuits to begin creating stable new branches in your gray matter. For the next 3 weeks, you are going to operate under an unnegotiable pact with your future self, sustaining 3 fundamental rules in your daily routine. First, absolutely no purchase of any non-essential item online will be completed without you passing through the temporal purgatory of the 72-hour phantom cart. Second, no credit or debit card data will remain saved on any facilitated consumption platform, forcing you to face the physical friction of retrieving your wallet for every single spend attempt. Third, every single time stress, fatigue, or frustration triggers the automatic desire to spend as a refuge, you will intercept the movement and apply your dopaminergic substitution activity immediately. As the days advance within this protocol, the neural pathways of the unconscious impulse will lose strength from lack of use, while the muscle of your attention and your financial self-control will become your new operational default. Every time you hit buy on autopilot, you aren't just trading currency for an object. You are trading hours of your life, your hard work, and your mental freedom for a temporary chemical ghost. The system is designed to keep you broke and scrolling, but now you know the code. You have the biology, the psychology, and the practical friction required to fight back. If you are ready to stop being the target of Silicon Valley's algorithms and start reclaiming ultimate command over your mind, hit the subscribe button right now. By joining this channel, you aren't just following another page. You are choosing to decode the hidden mechanisms that govern your daily decisions, protecting both your focus and your long-term wealth. The anesthesia is over. The baseline is restored. Control over your attention and your money is permanently back in your hands. See you in the next video.